Today on the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, episode number 31. Do you zig and zag as a parent? Well, my guests, Cori and Mike, authors of ZagZig Parenting, they zag and they zig as parents. We talk about what it's like to be a parent and a stay-at-home dad and a working mom. My question for you is this thing as being a perfect parent? We'll answer that question next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Welcome to No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast. I want to say thank you for being here. I know, as dad and a parent and a busy adult, our time's limited and stretched. We're always going from one place to another, or you're always trying to find, do I have enough time to take care of that? Thank you for listening. If this is your first time to listen to the podcast, welcome. This is a podcast about having a conversation, being a busy adult and a dad and parent. Issues and topics related to being a dad and a parent, or just a busy adult. I mean, it's interesting, this journey so far of this podcast. I've come across many different people so far in many different fields and books and topics about being a parent and adult and kind of help us in the journey, the journey of life. Let's get involved. No more sitting on the sideline. What I mean by that is you need to get involved. As a dad and a parent, this is important. It's our job. They depend on us to show them the way and stuff like that. And it's fun because I like being an involved dad. Even though I'm recently divorced, I try to be involved as much as I possibly can because I love spending the time with my son. Believe me, I love to watch sports. I love to do other things, but when he's with me, it's his time. It's important to me that I share the moments with him because they go by so fast. Because it's funny. I'm just recently, start of the school year just started, and you see all the pictures of all the kids, and especially my son too, for the years. Their first grade, the fifth grade picture. My son's going to pre-K, but I see the pictures of the year before when he's in preschool and stuff like that. Time goes by so fast. It's why it's important to get involved. This podcast is a weekly podcast, except this week. There's a 2-episode, and this is kind of a bonus episode. It'll be dedicated to have a sense of community. What I mean by that is I want to talk to you. Yes, you, the one listening to the earbuds, listen to me talk. I want to talk to you. That's right. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to know what's bugging you. You know what you can do on the right-hand corner. If you go to the website, nosittingonthesideline.com, you can see a speak pipe button there. You can leave a voicemail or leave a comment in the show notes, or you can send me a message. You can find all my contact information at nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. All comments help improve the podcast. I know we're all going through the same issues. I hate saying same. We're going somewhere. Being a parent, a dad, and a busy adult. I'm not an expert. I'm just a dad on a journey, trying to figure out this one step at a time in this crazy world. So, get involved. On today's episode, my guests, Cori Reed and Mike Becker, and their book is called ZagZig Parenting. I also like a little description on the title of the book that says, Misadventures of a Career-Driven Mom and a Stay-at-Home Dad. This is one of the interviews that I thought was very interesting in the sense that I had a lot of good laughs. They were a very fun couple to talk to. Cori and Mike were the great guests on this episode. They have given insight to a career-driven mom and a stay-at-home dad. Mike talks about his ins and outs of being a stay-at-home dad for 20 years, and Cori gives her perspective of being a working mom. Things we talk about in this episode is how to organize your family, because they had 4 kids, and it can be hectic. How to have a sense of humor about being a parent, because being a parent itself is stressful. You got to laugh at yourself. Also about paying forward to other parents, life as a stay-at-home dad, mom and dads do not see things the same way when they're parenting their children. So let's jump into the interview with Mike and Cori, the authors of ZagZig Parenting. Today on the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, my guests Cori Reed and Mike Becker, both authors of ZagZig Parenting, proud parent of 4 kids, and they share the adventures in parenting. Welcome to the podcast, Cori and Mike.
Thanks,
hey, Joe.
Joe.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate sharing with a fellow parent.
I got to ask, you guys got 4 kids, and I know you're both, and the world's very busy. What is one of the best times, quality time to spend with all 4 kids together?
Yeah, I think it's funny. This is Cori. I'll start. I think it's funny just because in our book, Mike's been a stay-at-home dad for 20 years, and I've been the working mom. I think I kind of chuckle because I could handle a boardroom with 20 people talking at the same time, but coming home to 4 excited kids at one time got overwhelming for me sometimes. But I think there is also joy in that in terms of, I'm the youngest child of my family, the youngest of 3, but our 4th child is extremely loud. I think he just learned how to get his voice out there. And even sometimes you have to say, dude, turn the volume down.
Yeah, I think for me too, Joe, like Cori said, it was chaos at times in the house with the 4 kids and everybody going different directions. But when my wife was actually home and we actually had all 4 kids home at the same time, the family dinners were part of my favorite part of the day, where we could all just sit down, talk about, Cori would always say, what are the 3 best things that happened today? And we'd all go around the table, talk about the day and what happened, and it was a good time for all of us to just kind of chill and be together and have a good meal.
It's interesting, and both I'm not saying it's kind of common nowadays. Actually, you see a lot of dad groups now popping up, stay-at-home dads. And how is it the roles reversed? How do you guys handle that?
Yeah, we started this. So our kids now are 21, 19, 18, and 15. So Mike started staying home when our first one was a little over 1 year old. And so for us, what happened is, and actually in between there, Joe, we moved. So each of our children were born in a different state. So for my career, we had the opportunity to move a few times, and we joke around that each time we moved, we had a child. So something happened in between there.
We're not moving again.
Yeah. Especially now that the youngest is 15. But I really do think that when we did this initially, and we can talk more about that, but when I was 16 years old, I knew I wanted to marry someone to stay home with the kids. We didn't think about it until we were in a situation where we had a laugh where we said, oh, that's what happens when dad's home during the day. And I'm not. So for us, it became just the way we worked. If you want to add, like when you took the kids to activities in Virginia, like how people would respond.
Well, I would be the only dad at Kinder Music or at playgroup or whatever it would be. And so, the teacher would always say, all right, moms, let's get up and dance. Come on, let's get up and sing. And so basically, Joe, I just became one of the moms. And you know what? I was fine with that. Finally, they figured it out, and they're like, all the moms and dads get up.
But I do love actually, Joe, your point about not being on the sidelines, because I love that message of, we don't write the book to advocate the stay-at-home dad and the working mom situation. We want to recognize that there are all sorts of families out there, and I think the point is just, hey, whatever you can do, just get in and get involved. Don't sit on the sidelines. So I really love that about your podcast and your site.
Well, thank you very much. It's being involved. I mean, it's funny, and probably from our generation, and you guys too, my generation, is dads didn't get involved, and now like they do nowadays.
Absolutely, sure. And I think we both came from very, I'd say, traditional homes where dad worked and mom stayed home, and later on, my mom worked outside when I was in high school. But I think still, you're absolutely right, and so it's kind of neat to see a lot of podcast and active dads popping up. And for us, it's just a really celebration of that fact. And I think, credit to Mike, he was kind of a pioneer at the time. And, he took some tough hits when he met this. Well, you can talk about this.
Well, yeah, I met a surgeon one time. His wife was out of town, and I got to know her pretty well at waiting for gymnastics to end. And we always would talk, and she was always a pleasant, nice woman. And then her husband came one day, and he sat next to me, and he started asking me questions about being a stay-at-home dad and how can I feel like that gives me a sense of pride and a sense of dignity that I'm not doing anything except taking care of my kids. And, for me, I was fine with it. I took it in stride. I said, listen, to me, I heard this a long time ago, that they're not going to write on my tombstone how hard of a worker I was or how I progressed in the company. They're going to write about how involved I was as a father and how loving I was as a spouse. And so, it's an ego thing, I think, for a lot of men when they first start out, or at least it was for me, to give up what I'm supposed to do and be the breadwinner. But once I was able to get over that ego piece, everything fell in place really well for me.
It's interesting. I was reading in the book a little bit about an article was written about you. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. It's funny. I think that he, when, our fourth child wasn't born yet, so it was probably our third child, and it was called Man Among Men.
Man Among Moms.
Yeah, Man Among Moms.
Yeah. It was right around the Father's Day, and I had started probably a year or so before that, I had started a local play group in our area, and we'd actually with dads. With stay-at-home dads, and we had gotten some coverage by the local paper for doing that and so forth. And I think that was kind of the follow-up to that. They said, hey, we really like to do a story on you and your family for Father's Day. And so, yeah, it was kind of a neat deal. They followed us around. They got a good chance to interview us. They followed Kori to work and kind of really got a glimpse of what it was that we do every day.
But I would say that even then, Joe, I think we write in the book that one of my very good friends, another working mom, called me. And while she was very supportive, she said some of the reaction from her relatives were, oh my gosh, isn't he embarrassed to be in the paper saying that? And so I do think what we've had to learn over time is, and you know this too, Joe, we all go through our own challenges in single parenting and dual parenting. And, people feel like they can judge all the time. And so I think sometimes something we've had to learn is, what's the best for our kids. And I'm not saying that's why we call it misadventures. We weren't always the best. So the book is not about lecturing. It's really about, hey, here's where we've had some fall down moments. But the whole idea of learning that when somebody really is judging, they're more their issue than it is ours. And, for us, the gauge has to be, how are our kids doing? And, while knock on wood, so far we're doing okay.
But I remember I can talk to another fellow dad, and I was in the park with my son, and I can remember, and he had like 3 kids, and we joked around. There's no owner manual. You just got to figure it out for yourself sometimes.
You're absolutely right. And there's this great author, I like her a lot, Brene Brown. She's actually a PhD on. She writes a lot about vulnerability, and she has this book called Imperfect Parenting, and she talks about the fact that there's really no manual for parenting. And so we have all these ratings we give, but honestly, things change. And doing some research from the book, I had to laugh. When I grew up, my mom loved Dr. Spock. When Mike and our parents were younger, we loved Dr. Brazelton. I'm sure there's a new person today that we don't even, because our kids are older now. But there was a point in time where one of the parenting techniques was to literally leave your child outside as long as possible, even in the cold weather. And when they went to bed at night, to not feed them during the night. So I think it's funny how this evolves, right? And this is really, as you point out, Joe, it's a very serious business raising kids, right?
Exactly.
We laugh because it's part of our coping mechanism. Sometimes like, oh my gosh, we tell our oldest all the time, thank goodness you teach us to be better parents. Your brother gets to benefit from that as the youngest child, but we might have messed up on you a little bit. I'm sorry.
A little trial and error on the first one. We fixed it on the second one. Maybe by the fourth one, you got it perfect.
Exactly. I'm not even claiming perfect. I'm like, I'd say better.
Better, yeah.
What has been some challenges though in being you're a working mom and Mike, you're a stay-at-home dad. What's been some challenges in communication? Because I know that's important. Because especially when you have like a little, you get 4 kids, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, Mike, do you want to start?
Yeah, as you can tell, my wife is a big communicator. She has no problem at all telling her opinion or getting her point across, and so she and I are opposite ends of the spectrum. Let's just say that. And I think for a lot of reasons, my kids have been better off having me home than her. But it definitely does. Communication is definitely the key. And I'm going to be honest, we haven't always had it figured out. We've been through a lot of family counseling on this to try to get to a good spot, because it was important to the two of us to work out our issues and try as hard as we could on almost all things parenting wise, at least, to be on the same page and support each other. So I think it's been a learning process for sure.
Yeah, and I can give a specific example, Joe, that we actually mentioned in the book, that when we first, with our first child, we both of us worked until she was we got transferred when she was about a year old. So then I said, hey, we're getting transferred to a small town in Virginia. Will you try staying home? And we're expecting number 2. And so he did, begrudgingly. It wasn't like he was thrilled with this. And but then I was still doing all the cooking and the cleaning, everything else. And finally, one day I read this book called The Family Manager by Kathy Peel. And this is, Joe, where I, as a wife, will say it was probably one of the worst moves I made in our marriage. And I, to this day, I'm like, okay, we've gone through counseling. We've been married 24 years now, but it was not the greatest moment. But I handed Mike the book called Family Manager. I said, look, you've been promoted. You're now the manager. I don't suggest, Joe, communicating that way. It made for a rough year, but it was interesting when there's a lot of information out there now, I'm sure you've seen, about sharing the roles and what men do. And I actually think there are many men who are quite active and involved in their families, yet these stereotypes are so strong that men aren't, that holds true. But honestly, I think we need to highlight some of the great aspects. It also creates a culture where men feel more engaged. And I had to learn, Joe, also how to ease up. And what my counselor told me is, she's like, Kori, your husband doesn't see dust and you do. Do you want to keep arguing about that? And it was a really good situation for me to say, you're right. I keep picking something that's very narrow when there's so many good things happening. So I think it has been a constant negotiation. And Mike and I are very open about, we've been to marital counseling a number of times. We call those tune-ups because it's a lot of work, especially when we're managing through this role reversal situation.
Mm-hmm. There's one thing, and one thing, a key thing, because I was going to actually talk about that, being the family manager. I thought that was very interesting, getting promoted, Mike. Because you don't really think about that too much, to be honest. You just think you just do what you have to do, and sometimes, even being stay-at-home moms too, you don't realize how much actual organization you do and how much work, and you don't even think about it, you just do it.
Oh my gosh, I was joking around with Mike that when I think, because I haven't worked in corporate for a while, looking at competencies and stuff, when I think about what is really required today of workers to be adaptable and flexible, we joke around a lot that Mike says, well, I had 4 bosses all the time, that my job was 24/7. And so I think you're absolutely right. There's not enough credit given to at-home parents for really, with between 4 dogs, among 4 dogs and 3 kids, 3 kids, and what do we have? What do we have?
3 dogs, 4 kids.
Yeah, 7 of something. There can be a crisis at any moment of the day, and the reason we call the book ZagZig, quite frankly, is we really think everybody zigzags through life. There's rarely that perfect day that we all dream of, but we called ZagZig because of our over, so we kind of had a ZagZig through life. But all of us have to do that, and I think, to your point, at-home parents have an incredible job managing a household and family and many people's lives.
But it's interesting, and I think it's something I read about too, is treating like the family like a company. Like, how do you organize that? Do you like, you have a schedule, or how does that work? Because you guys have a lot of things going on.
Yeah, well, let me let Mike speak first, because he didn't love that initially.
I was not all about that. When they were young, I quickly embraced the planner and the Palm Pilot, actually. So I carried I carried the what was it? What kind of planner was it called? Anyways, Franklin. I carried the Franklin planner in one hand, Joe, to write out all my dates, to keep everything in, and then I had my calendar in my Palm Pilot, one of those first Palm Pilots. So I had 4 kids and these 2 things everywhere I went. I wouldn't leave. I mean, I might leave a kid home, but I'm not going to forget those things.
And and I think it's both a blessing and a curse. I think that where it gets challenging is, as a career woman, I've been exposed often to project plans. I often say business people are just maniacal problem solvers, but same thing at home. But we have different tools to do that with. And so there are times where I introduce tools that Mike would say, do not work as me. I don't want to work as me.
Yeah, don't let her talk about the project plan she put all of us.
Project plans in our house is like, as soon as I say the word project plan, I think Mike gets hives and he starts sweating. So
could you like to describe what a project plan would sound like?
Yeah. So for me, I tell you, like, I've had to manage projects. So for me, it's really natural at in a corporation or a place where you're looking at, you have a deadline, maybe September 19th for a project to be done. And so there's all those back steps that it takes to get something done, and then have contingency plans if something happens. And so that's, there are people that have actually certifications in project management. We have good friends that have their certification, but I've had to use those tools a lot. So in our house, when I say to Mike, hey, why don't we declutter? Let's have a goal of getting it done by, I'll make that up, September 19th. And he'll say, oh, okay. And that's it, and then like next by. And so my thing is, I'm always like, the more we put something off, Mike, like cleaning out closets, it becomes a monster when you finally have a deadline. But if we did a little bit each day, and this is, I would say, Joe, we've never resolved this. This is where I think the 180 and Mike and I come out where we approach things very differently. That I like to have a plan and say, okay, let's get this little bit done. And for Mike, he kind of likes a little more flexibility.
I like to chill, as my son would say.
So I think some of those tools, and then even for me, like one of the chapters I write about is putting my child on a performance improvement plan. I think something different for Mike and I is that I'm just a continuous improvement person just by nature. And so, of course, in a work environment, in a large organization environment, it's always about how do you do better than next year. And I've always worked in publicly traded companies, so that's always the mantra. How do you better the quarter over quarter, year over year? And so that's ingrained in me. And so I'm continually pushing the family in this sense. So, when our oldest child was I think 3 years old, she came home with a preschool report card that says she wasn't cutting correctly. So, of course, that night I get lines on a paper. I'm like, we're going to practice this. And I write in the book that after she cuts 2 lines, she wants to get up from the table. And, of course, I'm devastated, oh, your job's not done. We're not done on your project plan. And Mike, removes the scissors from my hand, not sure what I'm going to do next with these. And so it is, I don't, it's funny when we've talked to other people because I think that is really not a universal male or female trait. I think we've talked to couples where the man is more like I am and the woman is different. So I think in couples, there's typically one is more dominant than the other in terms of that style. And I think it just, it's always good there's someone that wants to chill. It just creates some interesting conversations.
I bet it does. Because it can probably, you see here parents push kids a little more than because they want them to do good. And then there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes it could be a little bit too much.
No, and I give Mike tons of credit for that. I mean, Mike's, I'm the one that's saying, okay, let's make sure we do this by this day. And Mike is looking at me. And like you said earlier, I think even our kids. So in the book, each of our kids write a chapter in the book from their perspective. Mm-hmm. But even our kids will say, oh my gosh, if mom had been home with us, we would have been so much different. So, and Mike, you can speak to even some of the other traits you have, you're much more nurturing than I am in terms of physical health and just other aspects.
So, when the kids were younger, if we were outside, all 6 of us playing around or whatever, and one of them had fallen and scraped their knee, if they're standing right next to mom, they might look at mom, but they're going to run over to me for the empathy and for the cleaning off the boo-boo and that sort of thing. But now that they're older and the girls are left home, now I was all that for them, and now they're calling mom. And I just remember the first time that happened, standing outside of the room, pretending like I was not listening, but listening the whole time. What is going on? I've taken care of all of their issues up until now. Now they're calling mom for help.
But it takes a team. It takes a team to raise the kids.
Yeah, and I think I do want to give a shout out there, and I know that a lot of families, sometimes there is not a team available, and so I think I want to respect that. This is how it's worked for us, but I recognize that many of my friends that are single parents, or that what I feel like is but both of us get some relief. Like it
Right.
used to be when I would come home from work, Mike was like, "Here are the kids," or vice versa, and I think, gosh, there are single parents they don't get that break. So but then the village becomes just a very different village. So I do think that that I really am a big believer that it takes a village to raise a child, and we've been blessed by many good people in our lives who've been great influences and helped us.
Since your kids are older, did you remember the season of life when they were younger that everything just kept going, and you're like, there's no breaks or anything? How'd you guys deal with stuff like that?
So let me explain what a normal weekend would be like in our. Literally on Friday, I would sit down.
So wait, how are the kids? We moved here when Kenzie was they were 5th grade, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and preschool. So that's probably about
So somewhere in that range. But so on a Friday, I would sit down and I would work out a spreadsheet for my wife, and it would say, "This is what time you're leaving in the morning. These are the children you're taking with. These are the bags that you must have in your car. Here are the directions where you're going, and I'll see you at dinner." Because literally it was 2 or 3 things we each had, either to soccer, to swimming lessons, or to dance, or whatever it would be. And literally on the weekends, we would barely see each other until the end of the night.
And we laugh to this day. And so if our youngest child listening to this, we might reveal a secret right now. But when we first lived here, we had 4 children, each playing soccer.
Oh, wow.
And at that point, we're definitely in zone defense. You're no longer man to man after you go to 3, 4 kids. Well, we only knew like one person in town here. And so I called her up and I said, "Would you please do me a favor? Our youngest is playing his first soccer match. We're going to be there for the first 5 minutes. Would you mind coming and watching his game?" And she brought a friend. Now, he was thrilled because more than one person watched his game. But to this day, I've told his siblings, we got a picture. Do not tell him we didn't stay for his first soccer game.
It can be tough with schedules. It can really, really be tough.
Yeah, and I often say to people, it's our fault. Like, not that these kids sign them up for everyone to have soccer, everyone to have dance, everyone to have gymnastics, So it was self-imposed. And I do think probably some other parents are much more wise than us that tell children, pick 1 or 2 activities each year and that's all you do. It worked, but I think definitely to Mike's point, weekends became just managing traffic and chaos and running across town. And literally Mike would hand me an Excel sheet that said, "Here's where you need to be." And by the way, Joe, I'm just directionally challenged. So when Mike says he handed me an Excel sheet, I had to have go past the light on Pacific and turn right here. So he had to do a lot of work in that sense.
There's one thing I'd like to talk about, and I really enjoy your website and stuff like that. And one thing right when you go to the first page, and it says, "This is how we feel free to laugh and cry and learn from our chaos." And I found that very interesting.
Yeah, thanks. I think that my passion certainly, and Mike's too, but I think the passion is the idea that this is really about our journey to pay it forward. We are not in a position to lecture anyone about parenting, nor do we want to preach to anyone about that. But we have found funny stories along the way that we can laugh at now. I would say living through some of them, they weren't laughter moments. But we see tons of pressure on parents today to be perfect. There's the whole, not a new concept, but I'm sure you've seen on Instagram and Facebook and filters, we only put on there what our kids do extremely well. And it puts a lot of pressure on us. I even have to put myself on Facebook timeout for a while because I'm like, oh my gosh, look what these kids are doing. So I think for us, it was a real passion to help other people not feel alone in the parenting chaos, and to laugh really at us and with us. And it's our way to pay it forward to other parents that have helped us. So an example is there's a great mom I remember being. She had sons and daughters like we do, and I remember initially, Mike and I did not want the boys to have guns in the house, any type of Nerf, anything. And she said to me, you know what, Kori, what is going to happen if they find a real gun at a park one day? What do you think they're going to do? She said, I'm not saying you shouldn't monitor that, but her view was if you at least expose them and talk about that, boys are going to make guns out of whatever they have. And believe me, we've seen it, Joe, and they're pretty creative about that. And so it's just, I really appreciate parents like that who have been really supportive of us and given us good advice. And so we're hoping in any way we may help people feel not alone, to laugh with us and at us, and to really feel like, this is all a club we're part of, and not to judge each other, but just we're all trying to figure out the best way for our kids.
I got an interesting question because I have both of you here. Usually it's one person, but I got two people tonight. It's like a bonus. I know as a parent, I made those mistakes. I mean, I give you an example. Mine was my first time changing my son, and that diaper happened to be across the room, and I'm stretching to hold him there, and all of a sudden he rolls one way. You know how quick babies are.
Oh yeah.
And all of a sudden I snap back, grab him by his leg before he hits the floor, and I felt like the worst parent in the world. But it just happens like that. Have you guys ever experienced stuff like that, especially with kids?
My gosh, yes. And as a matter of fact, when you said that, I have envisioned some things
we
we
all go to our own place on that
child.
stuff.
I had tons of stuff like that. And it's one to this day, Joe, that I really can't get rid of. And my husband's like, you need to get over that. But even our oldest child, we had gotten permission to take her swimming when she was probably a little over, probably 4 months old.
Yeah.
And the doctor said it was fine just to expose her to water. And so we took her in the pool, and then I went to rinse her off in the sink at the club we were at. And the water had turned totally hot. And so this, obviously a little burn mark on her leg, to which I'm like in the locker room, Mike's in the other locker room, we're stressed out. And, this child does not have a scar to this day, does not remember it. But I'll tell you what, as a teenager, if she knew how to get to me, she would say something like, well, you told me when I was a baby. So yeah, I think any number of those stories.
Well,
yeah.
And I forgot my daughter at soccer practice one time. I was across town shopping, actually, and the coach called me and said, "Hey, Mike, I got your daughter here with us, and we're back at the house." And still, Joe, it didn't register. I said, oh yeah, I'll be right there. Yeah, I'm on my way.
And then I think one other one that I have in the book that is a famous story in our house that I cannot live down is we were getting ready for a party, and there was something I had asked Mike to do 2 weeks prior, and he didn't get to it. It was probably 10th on his list, but first on my list. And as each of the kids came into the kitchen to see what was next on their list to do, they read on my project plan. One of the kids would read off, "Oh, what's this red chair?" And so I explained it. "What's this red chair?" Well, the fourth child walked in. It wasn't number 4, but it was our fourth one to walk in the kitchen. And at that point, after being asked 4 times and staring at that red chair, I just went off, Joe. I mean, I was like mom out of control. Like expletives coming out of my mouth, like fume coming out of my nose. And so, later I apologized. But to this day, my kids will say, "Are you red chair mom mad? Are you that?"
They won't get it.
Yeah, exactly. So we've had a fair share of definitely those incidents. And I think that's the thing that sometimes we don't talk about. And Mike and I are like, let's have those kind of conversations, because if we can laugh with each other, I don't want people to feel like they're bad parents. Some parents, I think, don't make good decisions in the interest of their kids, but that's abuse and far things that we're not addressing here. This book is more about everyday parenting. And so that's the idea, is let's support each other and just laugh at those moments now that we can, right? Your son is fine, right?
He's fine. He's perfect.
Yes, exactly.
He won't remember it though.
No, but you will.
Yes,
exactly. And I'll tell him when he gets older, "Daddy almost dropped you."
Yeah. Watch out. Don't do it until he's in his 20s, because as a teenager, he'll use that against you.
Another thing I thought, because you guys, like I said, parents of 4 kids and stuff like that, and it was on your website. It was a priority task, like a planner, and I thought it was interesting about priority tasks for the day, less timely things to do, the ZagZig moments, and inspiration. I don't know if you want to talk a little about that. I thought it might be helpful for other people.
Yeah, no, thank you. This is where I'm sure Mike designed this. I'm just kidding. No, actually, Joe, I did it. I'm a big believer in that. If you don't write down at least your 3 priorities for the, so first of all, I've done the Gallup strengths, and achiever is one of my strengths, which just means I have to accomplish something every day, no matter what, or else I feel like my day is not great. So I've had to learn to develop tools, and I was sharing those with Mike and the kids. Just write like 3 things down. You don't have to have 10 priorities for the day. That's why it's listed as here's your top 3. I even gave people 5, and then here's your less timely to do. Because, of course, there's jobs that we have to get done during the day that no one likes to do. Like, who likes scrubbing the toilets? None of us like to do that. But if it has to get done, put it on your list, because it's going to be much easier to, go walk the dogs at that point than it is to scrub the toilets. But if you get that done, you feel good for the day. And so that was kind of my idea of how do we simplify things, but just put those 3 things done. And then if you don't get to those other 10 things, it's okay, because those aren't as timely for the day.
Right. And it's also like Kori was saying before, a way to pay it forward to other parents too, to maybe give them a different way to look at organizing their day, to, simplify it, break it down, and, be able to feel like you're accomplishing things when you have it listed out that certain way.
And the reason we put places up there to have an inspirational moment or a memory moment is, as Mike and I were writing this, we had to go back and remind ourselves. And like, your child is younger now. I'm sure that he's saying so many cute things that you think you'll remember. And I'll tell you, all of a sudden you're like, oh, what did they say?
When did they lose their first tooth?
Like our poor fourth child again. One of my traditions is every time the kids have a birthday, I bring them breakfast in bed, and usually I retell their birth story. And he will ask me 100 times about his, and that's the least details I can remember. So I think that any tools, and what we put on the website, certainly with that, if anyone has feedback for us and it doesn't work, hey, let us know. But it's just something we wanted to share back.
Since we talked about my son telling the cute things, one of the things is funny, especially being 4 years old, we go to the store, and obviously he asks for a toy all the time. I have a toy. You have a boy, you must buy him a toy.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a boy, but I'm still not buying him a toy.
Yes.
And at that age is like the ultimate negotiator. If you need somebody to have for contracts or anything, he's good at it.
Oh my gosh.
So
yeah.
I learned, not necessarily my wife, but I learned early on that it's a total losing battle to try to argue with a toddler. It's just not going to work. So I just decided early on, choose my battles, and some things I just I came up with a line, and I stole this from somebody else, but it was I love you too much to argue with you. And I would just try to keep that as my mantra when they started to get to that point.
Yeah, that's something that Mike is a master at better than me. So I have tried any way till sundown to argue with a toddler, and our second child is just very headstrong, and so she was probably 3 and she wasn't finishing her chicken. I said, okay, let's go to your bedroom. You have to finish this. We can't go outside and play. That child chewed that piece of chicken for an hour, Joe. I don't even want to look at her mouth, but there is some determination there, and I think now we can laugh at it. But when you honestly are living with a toddler and trying to reason and rationale with them, it just is not there, and they win every time. Because I walk away frustrated.
They don't understand reason.
No, and they can wear you down.
Exactly. One thing I want to discuss is up on your website. If anything you offer, I know Kori, you do speaking. Anything you offer?
Yeah, no, I really enjoy this aspect. My whole thing is having vulnerable conversations about parenting. And one of my friends read it. She goes, "Oh my gosh, Kori, you're very vulnerable in this book." And I said, "Yeah, that's the whole point. I want to create an atmosphere where people feel comfortable saying the real story, what's on their mind, so that we don't have to." This is not my term, but somebody used it yesterday. It's kind of like anti-parent shaming, right? It's like, hey, let's just have the real conversation. My guess is that if someone's thinking something, that it's happened to some other parent before. And so that's that. I'm also, I would say, Joe, I'm a big advocate of women, not at the expense of men. I obviously, I love my husband and I have 2 great boys. I don't want it to be expensive men, but I also believe that, research shows that the more women that stay in the workplace, the more all people rise. It's well-researched, study. And so I want women to find a way to stay in the workplace if they can. If it doesn't work for them, hey, great. I know the mommy wars exist. That's not my thing. I'm not looking to judge somebody, but I know they exist. And my thing is, how do we kind of encourage and help each other? And so from a speaking standpoint, that's a real passion of mine, is encouraging women to, again, and the reason I'd like write it, because men are an important part of that in this space. But in my case for working women, encouraging working women that you can do this, that if you choose to do it, that you can certainly, raise fulfilling children and be fulfilled in a career. And I want to be a role model for that.
Excellent. And it's a good thing, because girls need good role models, young girls.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny now that our boys are older, because even when they were younger, we would have all 4 kids would be in the car. And so our oldest is six years older than our youngest. Mm-hmm. So I was having a conversation with the girls about, when you say no, it means no. And so and as I looked at the boys, who at the time were probably, 3 and 5, I said, look, when a girl says no, she means no. Do you understand? And they look at me with these blank stares. I'm like, yes, Mom. But it's very funny. We had a good conversation the other night at dinner with the boys about what it means to be a feminist and supporting women. And I said to the boys clearly, because my son, our 18-year-old said, well, you're a big advocate of women. I said, yes, Austin, but not at the expense of other men. It's really important that we all rise. And I hope that, that supportive aspect of really supporting each other. So it's fun to have those conversations now. I mean, teenagers can be challenging, yes, but it's fun to have some really rewarding conversations where they start getting the concepts. You're like, oh, they were listening.
I think sometimes I forget that we were once teenagers before too.
Oh my gosh, yes. I definitely agree. And, when the kids roll their eyes at us, or, our oldest isn't, in college, not necessarily calling us, I have to remember that, we didn't have cell phones. We barely called our parents when we were in college. So why are we, all of a sudden we have to remind ourselves exactly.
Well, I guess I'm wrapping up. Final thoughts, where they can find you. Anything, final thing you want to say, parting word of advice?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Joe, thank you for, again, telling people not to sit on the sidelines. I think that's a really great summary, is actively engaging with your kids and do it in a way that works for you, and find a supportive network for you to build that. I think that's important. And we hope that ZagZig Parenting can be part of that network. It's one of those books where hopefully you can pick up a glass of wine and read it. And I think men can too, because Mike, it's written where, from my perspective, Mike gives commentary saying, whoa, she might say this, but here's what really happened. And so certainly we would appreciate that being part of your network, and you can find that at zagzigparenting.com, or we sell it on amazon.com.
Yep. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. Follow us there, ZagZig Parenting. We would love to connect with any of your listeners and share stories back and forth.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Cori, for being on the podcast tonight. I really do appreciate it, and have a good evening.
You too. Thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it.
That's all I have for this episode. I want to thank you for joining me in the Note City on the Sideline Dad podcast. And I want to thank Cori Reed and Mike Becker for being guests on the podcast. You can find all about their book, ZagZig Parenting, at readimage.com. Also, there'll be links in the show notes about how you can get in touch with Mike and Cori, with their social media links and information about them. And also, you can find their book on Amazon. There'll be a link in the show notes. Please comment on the podcast. All comments help improve the podcast. My contact information, if you want to get in touch with me, it's nosittingonthesideline.com/contact. I guess one thing I take away from this, even Cori and Mike, there's no perfect parent. I mean, what I mean by this, there's no man who'll be a perfect parent. We're all going to make mistakes. That is part of the journey. The best thing to do is be able to laugh at yourself and take a step back and say, it's going to be okay. Well, thank you for your time. Until next time, have fun, get involved with your children, give them a hug, and tell them how much you love them. Take care. God bless. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe to the newsletter to receive updates of the show and helpful and useful tips. This has been a production of Foley 42 Media.